Okay, so in this video, I was emailed by a viewer for my opinion on his credit card setup. His setup is unique in that he uses an American Express Hilton Surpass card as his primary spending card, and he spends enough on it per year that he's able to get Hilton Diamond status. He also asked several other questions to further optimize his setup, including the role of having the Aspire card, as well as if he should use the Bonvoy Brilliant card as a tool to earn lifetime Platinum Elite status. So with that in mind, there's a lot to cover in this video. So let's just jump right in. Now, Peter left this email for me and was willing for me to go over it. I think it's an excellent question. Brings up a lot of interesting dynamics that we don't really think about when it comes to credit cards. And I'm really excited to talk about this. So let's go ahead and get started. So he says that he's a recent fan of mine and he likes content I provide. He is okay with using this in the video, but he wants my opinion and perspective on my credit card, on his credit card wallet, and what he could change or upgrade. So he has the Amex Bonvoy Brilliant, the Amex Hilton Honors Surpass, the Chase World of Hyatt Visa, and the Citi Costco Visa. And so just as a picture reference, this is what that would look like. And so I did organize this in a certain way to kind of point out that there's going to be a theme in this live stream where we talk about core credit card setup versus secondary setup. So for him, and we'll kind of get into more detail with this when we go down his description and then his questions, but he uses his Amex Surpass as his primary card and the Citi card for Costco. But the Bonvoy and the Hyatt sound like they're more cards for benefits. So that would be a part of his secondary setup. So from this, the way I've laid it out, the primary core credit card setups are on the top and the secondary on the bottom. So we'll come back to this. The summary of his cards and more context is helpful too. He says that he recently got the Amex Merit Bonvoy Brilliant because he's a lifetime Gold Elite member and close to lifetime Platinum. And we'll go into that in more detail in a little bit. He thought he'd do it anyways. He does a lot of traveling for business and stayed at Merit's back then. He got the Hilton Surpass a couple years ago and now uses as a primary because the multipliers are to the point that he is a Diamond member with Hilton because he does spend that $40,000 a year on this card. So I want to comment on that in a moment. I find myself staying at more Hiltons than any other property. I recently got the Chase World of Hyatt because I've noticed for a while that the point redemption seems to be pretty good, but I know Hyatt doesn't have a lot of properties compared to the other two hotel brands. He also does like their top tier brands in Hyatt. For the Citi Costco Visa, he's a member of Costco and shops there frequently for a while, so he likes the cash back on that, and that's totally fine. So when we look at his questions now, and I apologize for the length of this, but we'll kind of summarize it at the end. He asks a couple questions. So in his situation, does he think that the Brilliant's annual fee is worth getting Platinum Elite status in order to earn that situation, like a lifetime status? He stays at Marriott, but not as much as Hilton. He uses the dining credit, so the annual fee is lower. And he does get that 25 Elite Night credit, which, by the way, does count towards your lifetime status, just in case anyone didn't know that. And so the way he sees it is that it's 25 credits divided by $350. So that's $14 per night, which is obviously not bad. And he needs to do this over 3 years. The second question is adding the green card after the Bonvoy Brilliant, after he cancels that, as what he calls to be a primary or backup primary credit card. So I don't know if that's something we want to do or not. So we'll talk about that too. And then he says that the Amex Gold card has too many credits for him to handle and not to worry about monthly. And I get that completely, but I do want to mention that this may be a great card for him, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second. He's also very interested in Elite status, and the Surpass has been primary for a while. He stays at Hilton frequently to the point that he also uses the quarterly credit every quarter. So that's good. He's getting that positive net value. If he's already spending the money, that $40,000 to get the Diamond status, is it worth it for him to upgrade to Aspire? The only multiplier it has, aside from the property, is the dining, but he actually says he does grocery and does more gas more frequently. I don't know if he does that in terms of he has more money spent total or that's a more frequent expense. It's kind of hard to tell, but that's something to think about. So in this situation, should he upgrade to the Aspire card? And lastly, he just mentions that he wants to keep the Hyatt card because he gets that free certificate. And then he also wants to keep the Costco card because he likes shopping there, which is totally fine. We'll also address that a little bit. So just to summarize, should he get the Aspire card? Should he keep the Brilliant for 3 years for lifetime Platinum status? And should he replace the Brilliant card with the green card? Those are 3 questions. I have a bonus Costco dealio at the end. So The first question is about the Aspire card. So when we look at the way he uses the Surpass card, we always talk about how, well, it seems much better to have the Aspire card for Diamond because it only costs you $550 for the Diamond as opposed to $40,000 spent on a Surpass card, which seems to be such a wide variation of spending on things. So that's usually true for almost everybody. But I think in his specific situation, the Hilton Surpass card is actually a great primary credit card to use. And I've actually thought about using a Hilton Surpass card as a primary myself too, just because it has a lot of those great multipliers and you can get a lot of good value from the points you earn from it. You can do better, absolutely. But for simplicity purposes, that's actually not a bad idea. So in my mind, the Hilton Surpass is a core credit card, i.e. something you use for spending, whereas the Hilton Aspire card is a secondary card, which is a card you use mainly for the benefits. So that first certificate, the Hilton Diamond status, all the credits, that's fine, right? So when we look at his setup again, the top two cards are going to be for spending and the bottom two cards are going to be for his secondary setup. When you look at the spending things, multipliers on the Surpass versus the Aspire, you can see that you do get a lot of great options and category spending on U.S. dining, U.S. supermarkets, and U.S. gas, which is his top three categories. So, he said in his email. And so you don't have the same abilities or you don't have the same categories available on the Aspire card because it's just not, they just don't have that. So those sort of everyday categories are not existing on the Aspire card. And so because of that, it's not a great card for spending, although it does give you those other things like diamond status and the finance certificate. Now, because he does get that $40,000 diamond status from the Surpass, he also will get that $15,000 finance certificate organically anyways. And so you also get the FNC too. So we have to keep that in consideration as well, which is really nice. So there's that. I do want to mention though that, like I said before, there's a way for him to get better return on his spend with not that much addition to what's going on. And it actually revolves around the gold card. And so this is just a slide about the Surpass benefits that we talked about from before. But for him, for the gold card, they actually can help him get a lot more points if he wants to kind of do the work for them. And the reason why I say that is because for him right now, he has the Hilton Surpass card. He uses all 4 quarterly credits. So instead of the annual fee being $150, it's actually net positive 50 for him because he's actually using them organically and getting them done, and then getting all the benefits of the points, and getting the FNC and getting diamond status. So he's really thought this through. So I'm actually really impressed by how he did that, and it's really a simple card. And so Vincent also agrees. He says that Surpass can easily be your one card workhorse for most of the year if you're spending towards that free net certificate, and I absolutely agree to that. So that's definitely another one card setup to consider. But if you have elevated status, and we don't know, elevated spending, and we don't know if the most spending is on the catch-all category, the grocery, the dining, it's usually the catch-all category, but we don't really know that based off of, what he said. But if it, for example, was dining and groceries at the highest category spend, the Amex Gold card would actually get you more value, and I'm going to explain to you why in a second. So you could think about doing an Amex Gold, Citi Custom Cash, and Amex Blue Business Plus, and then use those MR points earned to transfer to Hilton and get more points that way. Similarly, if you have dining and gas as your highest expenses, you could use the Amex Business Gold card, and then use the Capital One Saver card to cover the groceries, and the Blue Business Plus to cover everything else. Oh, by the way, the second one, the dining groceries, the Citi Custom Cash will cover the gas. So you'll cover all 3 of those everyday categories at some high level, but this may be a way for you to earn more Hilton points. And the way you do that is with their transfer partners. So let's look at this example. So you're going to look at basically the black text and then the orange text. They're separate things. I just wanted to point out 2 examples. So let's say you're first using the Hilton Surpass card just for dining. And for simplicity, we'll say you spend $40,000 in dining on this card. Okay. So if you do that at a 6x multiplier, that's 240,000 Hilton Honors points, as you can see on the left in the black text. If you had the gold card, which gives you 4x on dining, which has a $50,000 cap on it now, but this example is fine. If you spend $40,000 on the dining, on the gold card for dining, that's 160,000 MR points. Not as much. However, we all know that when you transfer from MR points to Hilton, it's a 1-to-2 ratio. Sometimes there's a bonus. I've seen 2.5, I've seen 2.6, but just for math purposes, we use 2.5. If you do this transfer at a time where there's a bonus, you can get 400,000 Hilton Honors points for the same amount of spend that you would have done on the Hilton Surpass card. So you're really getting 67% more points with this small little switch. And I am not a big fan of the gold card. You all know that. But I think it is very powerful in certain situations when your spend for food is very, very high. And so if that's the case for Peter, then this may be one thing to think about, because you're really getting 160,000 more points for very little effort. And is it worth the $325 plus the statement credits? That's up to him. But like for a lot of people, I would argue that it's probably yes. So you have to figure out what you want to do. If you look at the different example with the orange text, so that's if you spend $40,000 in the 3X category, you get 120 Hilton Honors points. But if you do the same situation that we talked about from before on the Blue Business Plus, now you're earning 200,000 points, which again is 67% more points just by making that small switch and transferring those points at a time with the Hilton bonus transfer. Even if there's no bonus transfer, you're still getting a lot of value too. You get 160 points, which is still more. You just get a little bit more if you do it at the right time. And so I just wanted to put that out there, just and spell it out, just so you know that that's a possibility. So even though you may have to do a little bit of work, as Uncle Luke says, if you put in the work, you can be rewarded highly. But the problem is the work is getting harder to do because Amex keeps adding on these statement credits that make it have you more value, but it really is, more value, but you have to spend more time dealing with it on a monthly basis, which honestly kind of sucks if you have a ton of cards that do the same thing over and over again. So that is what I would say for that. I do want to say that for him, the Hilton Aspire could be great as a secondary card. So if you want the Surpass and the Aspire, that would be great just for the FNC benefit. But maybe you want to kind of cut your costs and not do that. And so I totally get that. But I would say the Surpass is a great fit for you. The question is, do you want to go the other routes I just mentioned with the gold card or the business gold card? If that's the case, you would lose the diamond status. So now you have to get the Aspire card for that. And then it may be more worth it from the value perspective if you do the math for yourself. So there's that. The next question we want to cover is, should he keep the Brilliant for 3 years for lifetime platinum status? And so just so you know, guys know, there is lifetime awards when you stay with Marriott. So there's lifetime silver, gold, and platinum. There used to be titanium when there was SPG, but now that's gone. So that's not a thing anymore. But if you have had lifetime titanium, you have it forever. So if that's you, awesome. I'm jealous, but it is what it is. So for him, he has lifetime gold. Sounds like he had just reached it because you need 400 lifetime nights and 7 years as a gold elite member. To get that lifetime platinum, you need an extra 3 years, so 10 years plus 600 nights. And so with the Brilliant card, just as a review, $650 annual fee, $25 a month dining credit, you get 25 elite night credits. If you use every dining credit every month, that's $300 off. So then that effective annual fee is $350 total. So the question is, should he do it? I personally would do it because $1,050 over the course of 3 years for lifetime platinum, I think it's worth buying into. It's almost like an independent project. So if you look at the slide I went to back here, when you looked at his overall setup, the reason why I set it up this way, because if you look at the bottom 2 cards, these are like your independent projects, right? They're your secondary cards. They're your secondary setup you really don't use for spending, except in this case for the Brilliant, you're using it for $25 a month in dining. Otherwise, you're just really focusing on the Hilton Surpass and the City card for your spending. So that's really cool, right? So that's how you really think about those cards in a way that you can divide them up and figure out what they're really being used for. And so back to that slide, I would do it. And so it's only $1,050 if you take the $900 off from that effective annual fee from the $25 monthly dining credit. You have to use them, obviously, to make that work. But if you stay at Marriott's, Platinum is the way to go. Like you mentioned before with another commenter, Platinum is kind of the minimum level you want to get to start getting those really nice luxury benefits with those Marriott clubs, those Westin clubs. Gold it's okay, but it's not really something you want to strive for. You really want to get that Platinum status. And if you have lifetime Platinum, you really don't need this Brilliant card anymore unless you want that free night certificate. Then that's a different story. But at least for the Platinum aspect, you're good. So you can even like downgrade this card or get rid of it or what have you. Maybe at that point they'll have more statement credits, so we never know. Kevin Wynn also says that Amex Book is a pain in the butt. It really is. And the problem is all their cards have it. So you have a lot of their cards, you have a lot of statement credits, and it's very overwhelming. And that brings us to the third question. Should you replace the Brilliant card after he's done with this with the green card? And my stance on this is that, he's talking about using it as a primary or backup primary credit card. The issue with that is that I don't want to use a 1x catch-all card as a backup primary credit card. That's one thing. The second thing is that I never want to use an Amex credit card as my backup primary credit card. I want to use a Visa or MasterCard because if my primary, as was his case, is a Hilton Surpass card, if you go somewhere that doesn't take Amex and you only have two Amexes, you're kind of hosed, right? So you have to have a backup Visa or MasterCard. So that catch-all credit card should be at least a 2% or 2x equivalent card, which could be Blue Business Plus. I don't know. And then it has to be MasterCard or Visa. So I guess not because that's a American Express card. So it has to be a MasterCard or Visa, right? And so find one that works for you. That would be a better option for that. I don't see there's any reason to have this card specifically for you, just because you already cover a lot of these things already. But maybe if you don't say Hilton's, that's kind of what you're talking about. But I would personally not do that. If you want to clear, it's good to keep it because that makes it a net positive card. But otherwise, I would say use a catch-all card as a Hilton Surpass if you want to have a one card setup. And then if you want to add something else, use a backup Visa or MasterCard at a 2x or 2% level. So that was a long-winded answer to all of those questions. I do want to very briefly mention about the Costco card. Now, if you're in this chat, you probably have someone in your family that has a Costco Visa card. Your parents, your siblings, your kids, whatever. It's a very popular card, and I don't really know why it's a popular card, but it is. My wife has this card too, and she uses it sometimes, and so there's that too. But there are actually a lot of cards out there that are better to use for this purpose. One of them used to be the U.S. Bank Altitude Reserve. It is no longer here, so we can't really talk about that anymore. But U.S. Bank does have that Smartly credit card. So if you have 100K in assets for U.S. Bank, you get that 4% cash back, and it's a Visa card. So that is better than the 2% cash back you get at Costco. Just straight up, you can do this, and would be great. There's also the Bank of America Customized Cash Rewards card, which also requires you to be Platinum Honors, so 100K in assets. That gives you 3.5% cash back at wholesale clubs. And so that's limited to $2,500 per quarter, which is worse than the U.S. Bank card at this point, but it is an option if you have 100K in assets in Bank of America. There's also the Venmo credit card, which is a little lesser known card. You get 3% cash back on your top earning category, which could be groceries, but that groceries does include wholesale clubs. And so if this is like another easy, no annual fee, no asset requirement situation to use at the Costco to get at least 1% cash back. And if you spend like $1,000 a year at Costco, like maybe it's not worth it. But if you spend 10,000 or more, maybe that 1% is like a little bit better for you and may end up being, worth applying for this card.